Hey everybody, in this lecture we're going to be discussing the chapter on approaches to learning. So the components to a child's approach to learning include their curiosity, their creativity, their confidence, their independence, their initiative, and their ability to engage and persist. And when we're thinking about how we encourage those approaches to learning in young children, we can think about it in these three different ways. The sensory mode, the pacing and the timing, and the social context. And you have to understand child development in order to effectively engage children using these three ideas. So sensory mode, this just means as human beings, we either learn by observing, by listening, or by doing. And you probably know that you have your own approach to learning that fits you best. Maybe you have to observe something first. I know I will watch YouTube videos on how to do something before I give it a try. I taught myself how to shuck oysters and clams by watching a YouTube video and then by doing it. Some folks are great at listening. Maybe it's listening to a recorded lecture or listening to someone explain directions to something. And some folks just need to get down to work, and I learn cards best by jumping right into the game. If somebody tries to explain to me the card game before we get started, I forget all the rules. So you might as well just jump in with both feet. So make sure that you are providing plenty of materials and offering a range of modalities of engagement. And that just means opportunities to observe, listen, or to do. The pacing and timing of events is also important when it comes to how children engage. Some kids really like a fast-paced environment versus a slower and more deliberate environment. And as a teacher, you will have to make sure that your classroom environment meets both of those needs. So there will be parts of your day that move quickly and you're supporting those kids that learn best in a fast-paced environment. And some parts of your day you'll find need to move a little slower so that you're addressing those kids who are more deliberate in their interactions and need more time to process. The most important thing that you can do to support that is to follow their lead. And then in everything we do as humans, it comes with a social context. And so you have to think about the kids who really enjoy independent play versus group work. So think of yourself, as a college student. You've probably had a class where it felt like every single assignment was a group assignment, and maybe you were annoyed, or maybe you loved it. Or maybe there were no group assignments and you were really craving that social interaction because you learn best when you're engaged with your peers. And so this is the same for a classroom of young children. You should have plenty of opportunities for children to work together and to play together, but also opportunities for children to engage independently. Let's talk about learning experiences versus learning objectives. So, you want your learning experiences to align with your learning objectives. As a teacher, you likely have objectives that you have to teach to or things that you want children to accomplish, and you will be arranging the learning experiences to fit those objectives. But it's important to remember that children are going to engage how they engage, regardless of your objective or not. But some things to consider are children's openness to experiences and how they process those experiences. Some kids are super easygoing and are excited to learn new things and want to jump in and try new things. And some kids are a little more slow to warm. Maybe you could see yourself in a situation. Maybe a good example for some might be a challenging science course where you only have a little bit of background knowledge on the topic, and so you're slow to get started. And for others, maybe it's the same science class, little background knowledge, but you're eager to get excited and you jump in with both feet. And it really just has to do with their temperament. Same for young children. And then the processing of experiences goes back to the slide before. The sensory mode, the pacing and timing of the experience, the mode of instruction or the mode of engagement, and the social context. And then children's ability to plan and process their play, their executive function, and how they arrange their play. These two things come together to really help you identify how children are going to engage. So here are some teaching strategies to support openness to new experiences. One, focus on the child's efforts over the outcome of their actions, right? So what is it that you're really observing for? Is it that the child can engage in the activity, or is it they accomplish the activity to completion? Both are important, but if you want children to continue to engage and persist, you have to focus on their efforts. And then encourage, but never force the exploration of new activities. If a child isn't showing interest in something, don't take it personal, but move on. And then balance freedom and structure in the environment. There are going to be times where activities are teacher led, and there are going to be times when activities are child led. And so be thinking about how you balance those two. There will be times where you do want to engage in a focused small group activity with a particular learning outcome. And then there needs to be plenty of time for children to freely explore the environment. Give children choices and allow them to make intentional choices. And so think about the materials that are out in your room, and are children showing interest in any of them? And if not, change it up. Treat children's plans with respect. I have a great story for this one. I had this little guy, I was teaching preschool, and he was 5, and it was the summer before this kiddo went to kindergarten. And believe it or not, this kiddo is now a father. That's how long ago this was. But he loved the loose parts on the playground. We had long pieces of wood, flat wood like slats, and we had tires, just loose tires. And he figured out how to launch a tire using a slat and using the edge of the sandbox as a fulcrum to create like a teeter-totter. And he would have one child hold the tire on the end of his lever, and then he would jump on the other end to launch the tire into the air. And there were times that that activity was not safe, and then there were times that we could provide a safe environment for him to do that. So we would usually wait till his mom would come closer to the end of the day, and that was always our outdoor time. So we would wait closer to the end of the day when most of the other children had already left for the day, and we told them, you have to wait until there are no children at the other end of the playground, then you can launch your tires. Otherwise, the tire can fall and hit somebody. But we respected his plans, and we watched this kiddo all summer long figure out the best way to launch a tire. It was amazing. Encourage children to describe what they're doing. And so sometimes we would ask him, we'll call him Michael, we would ask him, tell me what made you think to do that, or what's the best way to balance the tire on the slat of wood. But we wanted him to describe what he was doing and to describe his thinking, because if he could articulate that to us, he could also articulate to other children who maybe want to join his play. This next one is tricky for me because I believe in rich discussion, but use your questions sparingly and never interrupt, and always be intentional. Don't ask a child a meaningless question during play. If you're going to ask a question, make sure that it enhances the learning experience. Now let's talk about teaching strategies for processing experiences. You want to encourage children to describe problems that arise during play, because if they can describe the problem, they can maybe even talk through solving the problem. Give children time to come up with solutions. If you're used to being the problem solver and coming up with solutions quickly, this is going to be challenging for you. Children need processing time. They need time to think through their ideas. And the best thing to do if you're going to ask a question or if you're going to help a child solve a problem, just pause and step back. Uh, Call children's attention to what is or is not working in their play. So, like with Michael and the tire, he figured out that he needed another child to help him hold the tire steady on the slat of wood, otherwise, it would fall off. And so we had to talk him through that. Like, oh, I see what you're trying to do. What's the problem? And he would say, oh, the tire keeps falling off. And so we would say, I wonder what might help keep it from falling off. And we talked him through until he figured out, oh, maybe another child could hold the tire steady while I get ready. Assessed children when they get frustrated, you probably know from your own learning experience that if you reach a certain level of frustration, the learning is over. And so when you start to notice that a child is frustrated with an activity or an event, it's time to switch gears and then come back to that same event at another time when the frustration has dissipated. Make sure that you provide open-ended materials that engage all of the senses, and then be a model and explore materials alongside children. So if you're inviting new materials into the classroom that children have never seen or used before, and you know that the toys have a specific purpose, you might need to be the model of how to use those materials. And now let's talk about adult guided activities versus child guided activities. You need both. Adult guided experiences are as equally as important as child led. And I know in our program we talk a lot about the child is the constructor of their own learning, and we're very constructivist in nature. But at the same time, adults serve as a guide in the early childhood classroom. Help children reflect by asking open-ended questions, create opportunities for children to describe their actions to their peers, use work samples and pictures. This is something I don't think we do enough in early learning, but use work samples and pictures to help children remember and reflect on their experiences. And that means displaying children's learning on the walls of the classroom. Provide the time and materials for children to continue working on tasks of interest over time. And allow children to elaborate on play themes. So if you notice that the children are engaging in the same type of play every day on the playground, as long as it's safe, as long as they are having a good time, allow them. If they are wanting to extend that play theme then from the playground into the classroom and it's safe and you can make opportunities for that, let them. When children are staying engaged in that way, they are really working through their ideas, and you're acknowledging their interests. And just share in children's interests and curiosity. All right, that's all I've got for you for this presentation. This is also in the chapter that you read, so if you needed further explanation, I hope that this helped. Have a great week.